They called him Old Sam, a worn-out wrench-turner nobody thought twice about. But when he rolled up his sleeve, the tattoo on his wrist stopped the colonel cold, a mark only a few in the Air Force ever earned. How could a mechanic hide such a secret? What made them see him for who he truly was? Share your thoughts below. Have you ever been judged by your cover? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's dive into this story together. The Arizona sun scorched the tarmac at Davis-Monthan Air Base, where Blackhawks stood like silent sentinels. Samuel Carter, 52, moved through the hangar's shadows, his hands steady on a wrench, his eyes tracing hydraulic lines with a quiet reverence. To the young pilots, he was just Old Sam, a man past his prime, good for fixing bolts, but little else. They'd laugh, tossing jabs about his age, never noticing the way he worked. Deliberate, precise, like he knew those birds inside out. Nobody asked about the faded ink on his wrist, hidden under grease-stained sleeves. They didn't need to. Sam kept his head down, his past buried, until the day everything changed. Samuel Carter's boots scuffed the concrete floor of the hangar at Davis-Monthan Air Base, his wrench glinting under the Arizona sun filtering through open doors. At 52, his hair flecked with silver, Sam was a ghost among the Blackhawks, unnoticed by the young pilot strutting past. They called him Old Sam, their voices dripping with condescension, assuming he was just a mechanic, good for tightening bolts, but nothing more. "Hey, old man, don't break those birds," one smirked, tossing a rag his way. Sam caught it without looking, his hands steady, calloused from years of work most could only guess at. He moved with a quiet precision, checking fuel lines and rotor pins like a man who'd lived a lifetime inside those machines. The pilots didn't see it, they didn't want to. To them, his faded coveralls and weathered face told a simple story, a man who'd never risen above the hangar floor. They missed the way his eyes lingered on the cockpit, the faint scar across his knuckles, the tattoo he kept hidden. Sam let their words slide, his silence louder than their laughter, waiting for a moment he hadn't chosen yet. The simulation bay at Davis-Monthan Air Base buzzed with the low hum of monitors, their screens casting a pale glow across the faces of young pilots clustered near the controls. They traded jabs and boasts, their voices bouncing off the sterile walls as digital Blackhawks sliced through simulated deserts. Samuel Carter stood at the room's edge, his wrench still clutched in one calloused hand, his eyes tracing the flickering terrain on the screens. At 52, he was an outsider here, a mechanic in their eyes, nothing more. Lieutenant Jenkins, a cocky kid with a fresh buzz cut, spotted him and grinned, his voice dripping with mockery. "What's the old wrench-turner doing here? Checking wires in the Sims?" The others erupted in laughter, their chuckles sharp, cutting. Major Reynolds, the senior instructor, leaned against a console, his arms crossed, barely glancing up. "Carter, you're not on the roster," he said, his tone flat, dismissive. "Stick to your tools." Sam's face stayed calm, but his eyes narrowed, a glint of steel beneath the quiet. "I'd like to run a diagnostic," he said, his voice low, steady, cutting through the noise. Jenkins snorted, leaning back in his chair. "Let him try, sir." "Bet he crashes before he even gets off the ground." The room roared again, the laughter louder now, but Sam didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his boots deliberate on the polished floor, each step silencing the room for a heartbeat. Reynolds raised an eyebrow, half amused, half annoyed. "Fine, Carter. 2 minutes. Don't waste my time." Sam nodded once, his expression unreadable, and slid into the simulator pod. His hands settled on the controls with an ease that felt wrong for a man they called Old Sam. The pilots exchanged smirks, expecting a quick failure, but nobody noticed the way his sleeve shifted, hinting at the faded tattoo beneath, a mark of something long buried. The screens flickered to life, the pod's fans whirring softly. Sam's fingers moved, not like a mechanic's, but like they'd flown through storms these kids could only dream of. The room's laughter faded, replaced by a tense, unspoken question. Who was this man they'd dismissed so easily? The simulator pod's hum filled the bay at Davis-Monthan, a low drone beneath the flickering glow of screens mapping a digital desert. Samuel Carter sat inside, his hands steady on the controls, fingers moving with a precision that seemed to belong to someone else, not the weathered mechanic the pilots knew as Old Sam. Outside, Lieutenant Jenkins leaned against the console, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips as he whispered to another pilot, "Watch this." "Old man's gonna eat sand in 10 seconds. The others chuckled, their eyes flicking between the screens and Major Reynolds, who stood with a skeptical frown, his clipboard untouched. The simulation kicked in. A canyon run, 5 hostile targets, no pre-brief, designed to humble even seasoned pilots. Sam's face remained calm, his eyes locked on the display, reading the terrain like a book he'd memorized long ago. The digital Black Hawk roared to life, its rotors slicing through virtual air. He pitched the nose down, skimming low over jagged rock spires, the radar pinging softly as he hugged the canyon walls. Jenkins' smirk faltered. "He's using terrain masking," he muttered, glancing at Reynolds, who said nothing, his jaw tightening. Sam's hands danced across the controls, throttle, stick, pedals moving in a rhythm that felt alive, instinctive. The first red marker appeared on the radar, an enemy armor unit nestled between dunes. Without hesitation, Sam banked left, the chopper's nose dipping as he aligned the crosshairs. A missile locked, fired, and struck, the screen flashing with a direct hit. The room went quiet, the pilot's laughter replaced by shallow breaths. A second marker appeared, then a third. Sam adjusted altitude, shifted vector, and dropped into a narrow valley, the radar signal fading as he vanished from enemy scopes. Reynolds leaned forward, his clipboard forgotten. "That's a Tier 1 maneuver," he said, almost to himself. "Where'd he learn that?" Jenkins didn't answer, his eyes glued to the screen as Sam's chopper emerged from the valley, unloading a salvo of simulated rockets. 2 more targets erupted in digital flames, precise, surgical, no wasted shots. The 4th and 5th markers fell within seconds, each strike clean, the Black Hawk weaving through the canyon with a grace that defied its bulk. The simulation ended, the screen fading to black. For a moment the bay was silent, the hum of the pod the only sound. Then the door hissed open, and Sam stepped out, his face unchanged, as if he'd just finished tightening bolts. He wiped his hands on his coveralls, the faint edge of a tattoo, a dagger woven with rotor blades, peeking from beneath his sleeve. Jenkins stared, his smirk gone, replaced by something like unease. "Sir," he said to Reynolds, his voice low, "that wasn't a mechanic's run." Reynolds didn't respond, his eyes fixed on Sam, who walked past them toward the hangar door, his boots steady on the concrete. The Major's mind raced, piecing together fragments. A tattoo, a call sign, a skill set that didn't belong in a maintenance bay. "Carter," he called, his tone sharper now. "Where'd you train?" Sam paused, half turning, his voice quiet but firm. "I didn't." He walked out, leaving the room in a hush, the pilots exchanging glances. Jenkins muttered, "That tattoo, I've seen it somewhere." Reynolds stayed silent, but his hand reached for his phone, already dialing a number that could pull records most at the base didn't even know existed. Sam's past wasn't just buried. It was classified, and it was starting to surface. Samuel Carter's boots echoed softly as he left the simulation bay, the door clicking shut behind him. The air at Davis-Monthan was thick with the scent of jet fuel and sun-baked concrete, but inside, the pilots stood frozen, their eyes still locked on the blank screens. Lieutenant Jenkins broke the silence, his voice low, almost a whisper. "That tattoo on his wrist, did you see it? A dagger with rotor blades. I swear I've heard of it before." Major Reynolds, still gripping his clipboard, shook his head, but his frown deepened, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. "You're imagining things, Jenkins. Shadowblade? That unit's a myth, wiped from the records after Afghanistan. No way a mechanic's one of them." Jenkins leaned closer, his tone insistent. "Sir, you saw that run. No one moves a Black Hawk like that without combat time. Real combat time." The other pilots murmured, some nodding, others skeptical, their voices a low hum of speculation. One said, "Maybe he trained somewhere off the books." Another scoffed, "Or he's just lucky. Old man got a fluke." But the tattoo lingered in their minds, its stark lines, a puzzle no one could solve. Outside, Sam walked toward the hangar, his coveralls streaked with grease, his hands steady as ever. He didn't glance back, didn't acknowledge the whispers trailing him. The tattoo, barely visible under his sleeve, was no accident, a mark earned in shadows, in missions that never made the news. He'd kept it hidden for years, not out of shame, but because some truths were heavier than the machines he fixed. Back in the bay, Reynolds set his clipboard down, his fingers tapping restlessly. "Shadowblade," he muttered, the name pulling at memories he couldn't place. He'd heard stories, whispers of a unit that flew where others wouldn't, saved lives no one dared to, then vanished into redacted files. "If that's real," he said to Jenkins, "he's no mechanic. But why is he here, playing wrench monkey?" Jenkins shrugged, his eyes narrowing. Maybe he's hiding. Or maybe he was erased. The room buzzed with theories, each pilot tossing out guesses. Court-martial, burned-out legend, or just a man who'd faked his way through. Reynolds straightened, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Enough! Nobody talks about this until I check his file." But the doubt was there, gnawing at him. Sam's run wasn't luck. It was muscle memory, the kind forged in fire. The tattoo wasn't just ink. It was a key to a past the Air Force didn't advertise. As Sam reached the hangar, he paused, glancing at the Black Hawks lined up under the Arizona sun. His fingers brushed the tattoo, a fleeting touch, before he pulled his sleeve down and stepped inside. The pilots' questions hung unanswered, their skepticism cracking under the weight of what they'd seen. Something about Sam Carter didn't add up, and the truth, whatever it was, felt closer than ever. The afternoon sun hung low over Davis-Monthan Air Base, casting long shadows across the tarmac where Black Hawks stood silent, their rotors still. Samuel Carter tightened a bolt on a fuel line, his hands steady, his eyes scanning the machine with a quiet reverence. Then the intercom crackled, a sharp blast cutting through the hangar's hum. "All hands alert! Recon team's gone dark near Santa Catalina Mountains." "Possible ambush. We need a bird airborne now." The words hit like a shockwave, and the base erupted into controlled chaos. Pilots scrambled, their boots pounding concrete, but the lead pilot was down with heatstroke, and the backup hadn't flown a live op in months. Colonel Harper stormed into the hangar, his voice booming over the clatter of tools. "Which Black Hawk's ready? I need it fueled and armed. Move!" Sam stepped forward, wiping grease from his hands. "Tail number 9's prepped, sir. Just needs a final check." Harper barely glanced at him, his eyes hard. "I asked for a bird, Carter, not your opinion." "Where's your supervisor?" Sam's voice stayed calm, even. "Off base, sir. I'm lead tech today." Harper's jaw tightened. "You're not cleared to fly or fight. Get it ready for someone who is." Sam didn't argue. He turned back to the Black Hawk, running diagnostics with the same precision he'd shown in the sim bay. Hydraulics green, weapons synced, systems clear. In the colonel's office, Two warrant officers argued over who could take the stick, one shaky from a recent crash, the other rusty from desk duty. Sam sighed, his fingers brushing the controls as he climbed into the pilot's seat, muscle memory guiding him through the checklist. The tattoo on his wrist, a dagger woven with rotor blades, peeked out as he flipped switches. A staff sergeant, Monroe, passing by, froze. "Carter? Where'd you get that ink?" Sam adjusted his headset, his voice low. "Picked it up a while back." Monroe's eyes widened, but before he could speak, Harper burst back in, his gaze locking onto Sam. "What the hell are you doing in there?" Sam met his stare, unflinching. "You need a pilot, sir." "This bird's ready. I know her inside out." Harper opened his mouth to snap back, but Monroe leaned in, whispering something that made the colonel pause. His eyes flicked to the tattoo, then back to Sam. A moment of silence hung heavy, broken only by the distant wail of sirens. Harper's voice softened, just slightly. "You sure about this, Carter?" Sam nodded once, his hands already on the controls, ready to prove what no one else could see. Samuel Carter eased the collective, and the Black Hawk's rotors roared to life, clawing into the Arizona sky above Davis-Monthan. The cockpit hummed, screens glowing green as he pitched the nose toward the Santa Catalina Mountains, the desert blurring beneath at 150 knots. His hands moved with a quiet certainty, throttle and stick an extension of his will, the tattoo on his wrist, a dagger with rotor blades, barely visible under the headset's shadow. Behind him, a nervous co-pilot stammered torque readouts, his voice crackling through the comms. Sam spoke once, calm and firm. "Form on my 6, stagger low, radio silent unless you see muzzle flash." The chase chopper fell in, its pilot fighting to match Sam's precision. Below, jagged ridges rose like broken teeth, hiding the recon team's last ping, a Humvee pinned in a shallow valley, smoke rising thin and gray. Sam banked left, the Black Hawk knifing between sandstone spires, staying low to dodge radar. Thermal optics flared, revealing 4 heat signatures creeping toward the disabled vehicle, rifles glinting in the dusk. He keyed the private channel. "Chase 1, orbit high right. Cover my egress. I'm sweeping." The co-pilot's voice trembled but steadied. "Copy. Shadowblade." Sam didn't react to the call sign, his focus locked on the valley. He dropped lower, rotor wash shredding the smoke, the nose cannon tracking the eastern ridge. A burst of 30mm shells ripped the shale, warning shots that sent 2 hostiles scrambling. The others ducked, one fumbling a rocket launcher. Sam pivoted, squeezed the trigger, and the launcher erupted in a bloom of flame. "Team Raven, radio check," he said, voice cutting through static. A raspy reply answered, "Wounded but alive, tires gone. Can't move." Sam flared the chopper into a hover, dust swirling as his crew chief leapt out, sprinting to the Humvee under the deafening roar. 30 seconds later, the chief's voice crackled. "Package aboard." Pop smoke. Purple haze bloomed, and Sam pulled collective, the Black Hawk surging upward, slipping between ridges toward base. The chase chopper trailed, carrying a bleeding sergeant who owed his life to a man they'd called a mechanic. The Black Hawk's rotors slowed to a low thrum as Samuel Carter guided it down onto the tarmac at Davis-Monthan, the skids touching concrete with a whisper of precision. Dust settled in swirling clouds, catching the glow of the base's floodlights as a crowd gathered, mechanics, pilots, and grizzled airmen drawn from their barracks. Sam unstrapped, his boots hitting the ground with a quiet thud, his coveralls streaked with grease, the tattoo on his wrist, a dagger woven with rotor blades, glistening with sweat. Colonel Harper pushed through the onlookers, helmet tucked under his arm, his eyes locked on Sam. The air was thick, charged with the weight of a recon team saved, an ambush shattered, all by a man they'd called Lao Sam. Silence held the crowd, louder than the fading turbines. Harper stopped, his gaze dropping to the tattoo, then meeting Sam's steady eyes. "I flew with a shadow blade in Kandahar," he said, voice low, almost reverent. "They pulled my squad out of hell. That was you, wasn't it?" Sam's face stayed calm, but he gave a slight nod, acknowledging the truth without fanfare. Harper drew a breath, his tone rising to carry over the crowd. "From this moment, Samuel Carter is reinstated to flight status and assigned lead on Black Hawk operations. Any objections? Take them to me." The words landed hard, and murmurs rippled, turning to applause. Slow at first, then steady, resounding. Pilots who'd mocked him hours ago stood silent, heads bowed, their smirks replaced by respect. Lieutenant Jenkins, pale, stared at the ground, his arrogance buried. Sam stepped toward the crew chief, who clutched a radio, eyes wide with gratitude. "You got them home, Carter," the chief said. Sam's voice was quiet, firm. "You don't need my past to know I'll get you home. Every time." The crowd hushed, his words sinking in, a promise forged in the fire of that day's mission. He turned toward the hangar, steps measured, wrench still in his pocket. The airmen parted, their gazes following not a mechanic, but a legend they'd failed to see. Harper watched him go, his jaw unclenched, a rare admiration in his eyes. The base's rhythm resumed, but the air had shifted, heavy with a truth. Sam Carter didn't just fix birds. He made them soar. Samuel Carter stood alone in the hangar at Davis-Monthan, the Arizona sunset painting the Black Hawk's fuselage in hues of gold and amber. His wrench clinked softly as he tightened a bolt, his hands moving with the same quiet precision that had saved lives hours earlier. The base buzzed with whispers of his flight, the name Shadow Blade passing between recruits like a spark catching fire. A young pilot, Jenkins, approached, his bravado gone, his voice hesitant. "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry for what I said. You're no mechanic." Sam paused, his eyes meeting Jenkins's with a calm that carried years of unspoken weight. "Just do your job well, kid," he said, a faint smile breaking through. "That's enough." Jenkins nodded, stepping back, his face flushed with something like gratitude. Sam returned to his work, the hangar's shadows wrapping around him like an old friend. He didn't seek the spotlight, didn't need the applause still echoing from the tarmac. His tattoo, once hidden, now lay exposed, a silent testament to missions long buried. The base had changed. Pilots nodded to him now. Mechanics lingered to watch him work. But Sam hadn't. He was still the man who showed up at dawn, tools in hand, ready for whatever the day demanded. His lesson was simple. Talent doesn't shout. It proves itself when called. What did Sam teach you? We ask. Share your thoughts below. When did someone's quiet strength surprise you? His story reminds us all. The truest heroes don't need to proclaim their worth. They show it, steady and sure, when the moment comes. Samuel Carter stood on the tarmac at Davis-Monthan, the night sky stretching wide above, pinpricked with stars. A Black Hawk silhouette loomed behind him, its blades still, reflecting the slow blink of the tower's beacon. His fingers brushed the tattoo on his wrist, a dagger and rotor blades, faded but unyielding. Footsteps approached, deliberate, and a man emerged from the shadows, mid-60s, no insignia, but his eyes carried the weight of old wars. "Didn't think I'd find you here, Shadow Blade," he said, voice low, warm. Sam tensed, then relaxed, recognizing the face. Took you long enough, Tom. The man smiled faintly. You saved my squad in Kandahar. I never forgot. Sam looked away, toward the distant jets under floodlights. Just did what was needed. Tom stepped closer. They tried to erase you, but I made sure your name's back in the books. Sam's gaze softened, a rare shimmer in his eyes. I fly when I have to, he said, pausing, which is always. Tom nodded, then walked away, leaving Sam alone under the stars. If Sam's story moved you, share it, we say. Subscribe, join us at Black Echoes, and honor the quiet heroes among us.